So in this video, I'll give you the ultimate top level overview of everything you need to know, minus any spoilers, so you understand how to play exactly the way you want to play. Let's begin with attributes. Attributes are locked in once committed to and play a huge part in how your character performs. Every attribute passively influences your character, be it with stats, what you can equip, or with conversational checks, wherein you'll have an extra option available to you during conversations based on your attribute being over a certain threshold. Attributes also influence how high your skills can raise and what perks you can purchase. Let's go through what each attribute passively does first, starting with body. Passively, body increases your health and stamina. It also increases damage with fists and gorilla arms, which are your body-based cyberware of choice. It also passively increases melee weapon damage, and that includes both bladed and blunt melee weapons, even though the bladed melee skill and perks fall under reflex. Body also decreases the movement speed penalty when grabbing an enemy or wielding a heavy machine gun, which includes turrets that you rip off their stand. Finally, it increases grapple duration of enemies. I also found the most useful part of the body attribute was opening doors with brute force. I lost count of how many doors I encountered that I couldn't open because of a too low body stats. There are also a few parts of the game where you need to fight with your fists, and body certainly helps in that regard. Though if you're not on a very hard difficulty, you should be fine. You can also rip people out of cars with this attribute. Body is required for particular weapons and cyberware, particularly heavy weapons like shotguns, machine guns, and Borg pistols. Also cyberware that allows you to go berserk. A high body stat rarely comes up in dialogue options. Reflex passively increases your evasion, crit chance, and mantis blaze damage. It's also used in a few dialogue checks during conversation, almost seemingly to represent your perceptive abilities. A few weapons in cyberware require high reflex attribute as well. Some bladed weapons, rifles, pistols, and cyberware that slows time. Technical ability is next, and it passively increases your armor. It's mostly used though to unlock doors, fix things, and hotwire cars. Strangely enough, I found body was used more often for opening doors, but technical is still very useful to have because when it's checked, there's usually a decent reward. It also comes up as a check in conversations fairly often. There are a few pieces of cyberware that require technical ability, some making you immune to various elements. Then we have Cool. It increases crit damage, resistances, stealth damage, and the mono-wire cyberware damage. It also decreases the rate enemies will detect you in stealth. So it provides a bit of everything and is a good supplement to builds. I'll talk more to this when we talk about skills. Cool surprisingly does come up a fair amount in conversations. Last, we have Intelligence, and this is used primarily to determine your net running ability, mostly influencing how fast you can quick hack enemies, your RAM capacity, duration of quick hacks, and I'll talk to Intelligence more when we cover skills. Certain Intelligence thresholds are also needed for hacking related cyberware. Intelligence is the safest attribute to avoid putting points into if you don't plan on hacking at all. You might notice that if you're playing a melee build, you'll be quite tanky if you invest in body and reflexes, as well as hitting extremely hard. Splashing in tech for the armor might also be worth it, or cool if you want to increase your resistances, armor, and damage output and everything while Cold Blood is active. If you want the highest damage output, you could realistically invest in body and reflex, but you need one of the two at least. Then you need to splash in some cool, though the highest damage is hard to gauge as even particular quick hack demons will instantly kill enemies. Cyberpunk is a game where it's perfectly viable to invest in all attributes equally and be a generalist. They all provide something and you'll be suited for every situation. Also, this is the best way to level up your skills and get tons of skill progression rewards. What are they? Well, first I need to explain skills. I briefly mentioned that attributes affect the skills that sit under them. They do this by setting a cap. If you have X in attribute, you have a max level of X in the skills under it. So 5 in cool will get you up to 5 in stealth. However, skill levels can't be bought with points. In order to raise a skill, you need to use it. For example, to raise your handgun skill, you need to use handguns in combat. You'll be granted handgun experience and then, at a threshold, the skill will level up. Each skill has a progression reward at level up as mentioned. Usually a perk point, but sometimes something major like increasing your handgun crit damage by a large amount. In terms of what skills you have, starting with the body attribute, we have Athletics, Annihilation, and Street Brawler. Athletics is your physical prowess, influencing your tankiness and stamina. Annihilation is all about shotguns and light machine guns, and for those who want to make a mess of their enemies. And then we have Street Brawler, which is all about using blunt weapons, which includes your fists and gorilla arms. Blunt weapons like bats are all non-lethal, so if you're planning a non-lethal route, this is one way to do it. Another is to find a non-lethal mod for your weapon, which you can get pretty early on. Under the reflex attribute is Assault, Handguns, and Blades. Assault is all about rifles, including assault rifles and snipers, as well as SMGs. Handguns cover pistols and revolvers. Blades cover bladed melee weapons, bleed effects, and mantis blades. Technical ability attribute contains 2 skills, crafting and engineering. Crafting is, you guessed it, all about crafting and disassembling items. Useful as crafting weapons can be quite potent if invested into. Engineering is not what you expect though, it's about tech weapons and grenades, as well as influencing the projectile launch system. The cool attribute influences stealth and cold-blooded. Stealth is all about stealthiness, knives, and poison. If you want to be stealthy, this is definitely a good skill, whereas cold blood is an interesting one. It's a skill that you need to put a perk point into to start gaining experience into it. When you kill a target, you'll get a stack of cold blood. With 1 point, a stack will increase your movement speed, but as you invest more in the perk tree, a cold blood buff will get quite potent, granting other effects. Finally, in the intelligence attribute, we have Breach Protocol and Quick Hacking. Breach Protocol is all about manually breaching into targets, hacking a computer for example. Quick Hacking is all about hacking targets at a distance using demons and RAM. RAM functions as mana does in fantasy games. I see this as more combat-oriented hacking. You can get targets to do things like shoot themselves in the head. Within all the skills are perks that you can invest in with perk points. Like mentioned, you gain perk points as skill progression rewards. In the perk tree, you have multiple perks locked. This is based on your attribute level, not your skill level. So you could have 20 points in reflex, 0 skill in assault, but will still be able to invest in the capstone perk Savage Stoic within the assault tree. Therefore, this game doesn't punish you for investing in multiple skills across multiple perk trees, though the bottommost perk of every tree, in this case the Punisher, requires 20 skill, so you're only locked off to 1 perk. As mentioned before, going a generalist build therefore won't lock you off to many perks as long as you have the attribute points, and you'll be getting a lot of perk points due to dipping into multiple skill progression rewards. Due to the fact you earn progression for all the skills you use, which gives you perk points to use in any perk tree, not just the one it was earned in, you're encouraged to play how you want rather than how you should to maximize your progression. For example, even though on my first character I focused on handguns and tech, I used breaches and hacks to make sneaking around easier when I could, especially to shut down cameras and turrets. This earned me free perk points. At the very least, I recommend putting 1 perk point into the Cold Blood skill and perk of the same name. This will mean after you kill an enemy, you'll get experience, as the Cold Blood ability will proc. Therefore, you'll start getting that skill's progression rewards. Use every skill when you can. For example, craft whenever you can. If you've got a melee blade build, you might consider having a sniper on you for those hard to get enemies, as you won't be terrible with rifles. It's easier to level up skills when they're lower, so you might as well claim those easy perk points. Also, a low skill doesn't mean less damage. It just means higher recoil and slower reload times, as well as less bonuses. Even though my first build had all the perks I could in handguns, switching to a rifle or blades felt just fine damage-wise. Cyberpunk leaves the doors open for you.